It began with small signs that I dismissed as paranoia. Late nights at work, hushed phone calls in the other room, vague explanations that seemed to blur when I pressed for details. I wanted to believe everything was fine, that my partner was simply stressed, perhaps overwhelmed by responsibilities I wasn't fully aware of. After all, love has a way of blinding you, of making excuses on behalf of the person you trust the most. But the unease grew, gnawing at the edges of my peace until I couldn't ignore it anymore. One evening, curiosity overcame me. When my partner left their phone on the kitchen counter and went to shower, I picked it up with trembling hands. I knew it was wrong, but something in my gut screamed louder than my conscience. The screen lit up, and with every swipe, the truth unraveled itself like a dark thread pulled loose from a garment. There were messages, names I didn't recognize, conversations about places I had never heard of, late-night plans that had nothing to do with the extra hours at work. There were pictures, too, not obscene, but intimate enough to cut deep. Smiles, laughter, dinners, arms wrapped around shoulders that weren't mine. I felt as though I was standing outside my own life, watching it crack open. The partner I thought I knew so well seemed to dissolve before my eyes, replaced by someone I had never truly met. The realization was cold and merciless. I had been sharing my world with a stranger who had another life running parallel to mine. In the days that followed, I became an unwilling detective. I noticed patterns I had been blind to before. Weekend errands that stretched for hours, business trips that always ended with the same vague exhaustion, the faint smell of a perfume that wasn't mine clinging to his shirt. I traced receipts tucked away in his jacket pockets, receipts from restaurants we had never visited together, for meals shared with company unknown. Every discovery left me torn between rage and sorrow. I tried to confront him once, casually, asking about the name that appeared most often in his messages. He flinched, just slightly, then smoothed over the moment with a practiced smile. He had explanations ready, each one neat and convincing enough to fool someone who wanted to be fooled. But the mask was slipping, and I could see the strain in his eyes. What hurt most wasn't the betrayal itself, but the performance, the fact that every kiss, every laugh, every whispered "I love you" might have been rehearsed, duplicated, spoken in another room to another person. I began to doubt myself, to wonder if I had ever truly been loved, or if I was simply playing the role he needed me to play in his carefully divided world. The confrontation came on a rainy night. He returned home later than usual, drenched and weary, and something in me snapped. I couldn't bear another lie. I laid everything bare on the table, his phone records, the receipts, the photos I had secretly saved. His face paled, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Not the fear of being caught, but the fear of losing control over the narrative he had so carefully constructed. He confessed, but not all at once. The truth tumbled out in fragments, jagged and painful. The double life had been going on for months, maybe longer. He had fallen into it almost carelessly, swept up in the thrill of being someone else, of living a story that wasn't weighed down by the responsibilities of our shared life. He admitted that he had loved me, or at least he thought he had, but that somewhere along the line, the love had splintered into two paths, and he hadn't been able or willing to choose. I listened, numb as he spoke. My anger was sharp but hollow, echoing inside me without release. There were no apologies that could mend the fracture, no explanations that could erase the nights I had spent waiting, trusting, believing. By the time his words ran out, so had my patience. I realized that the man standing before me, drenched and broken, was no longer mine, and perhaps never truly had been. Leaving wasn't dramatic. I didn't throw his clothes out the window or slam the door behind me. Instead, I packed quietly over the next week, each folded shirt a goodbye, each sealed box a final act of letting go. He tried to stop me, not with promises but with pleas for understanding, for forgiveness, for one more chance. But I had already given him countless chances without knowing it. My forgiveness had been squandered long before the truth came to light. When I finally walked away, it wasn't with triumph, but with a deep, aching emptiness. The life I thought I had built with him was gone, replaced by questions I might never find answers to. Yet, in that emptiness, there was also clarity. I had survived the shattering of an illusion, and though I carried scars, I also carried the knowledge that I deserved more than half-truths and stolen moments. I never looked back, and though the memory of his double life lingers, it no longer defines me. It is simply a chapter one endured, a reminder of how fragile trust can be, and how strong one must become when that trust is destroyed. The days after my discovery passed in a haze, as if time itself had lost its rhythm. I went through motions without feeling them, each moment colored by the weight of what I now knew. Even the smallest details of our home became unbearable reminders. The coat he always left hanging by the door seemed heavier, stained with secrets. The toothbrush beside mine mocked me with its quiet presence, a symbol of a shared life that was no longer real. I found myself replaying old memories, searching for cracks I had ignored. Our first trip together. Had he been texting her while I looked out at the sea? The night he surprised me with flowers. Were they bought as an afterthought, with another bouquet given elsewhere? Every tender word I had once cherished echoed back to me, hollow and suspicious. It was as though I had been living in a play, applauding a performance that was never meant for me. I began watching him differently. His smile, once warm and reassuring, now seemed rehearsed. His silences were no longer comfortable but suffocating. When he touched me, I flinched, not out of anger but out of disbelief that those same hands had traced another's skin with the same familiarity. The intimacy we once shared had curdled into something unrecognizable, a lie stretched thin across our days. There was one night, particularly, that sealed my decision. We sat across from each other at dinner, the clatter of cutlery filling the silence we couldn't break. He spoke of work, of colleagues I had never met, of plans for a future he still pretended to believe in. I nodded, but my heart was elsewhere, caught between the man in front of me and the shadow of the man I had discovered. In his eyes, I saw exhaustion, not from labor, but from juggling lives. I realized then that he no longer belonged fully to either world. He was fractured and I was clinging to the smaller half. I started imagining my life without him. At first, it terrified me, the quiet mornings, the empty evenings, the thought of coming home to no one. But as the thought grew, so did a strange sense of relief. For the first time, I saw the possibility of freedom, of stepping out from under the suffocating weight of his deception. I saw the chance to breathe again without questioning every glance, every word, every late-night absence. The night I left, the rain was soft, not violent, as though the world itself was whispering a gentle farewell. I packed only what mattered, clothes, a few books, photographs of my family, but none of us together. Those I left behind, because they belonged to a story I no longer wished to carry. He tried to stop me when he realized what I was doing. His voice cracked, his hands trembled as he begged. There were tears, perhaps genuine, but they could not erase the betrayal carved into my soul. As I closed the door behind me, I expected to feel shattered, but instead there was calm. A hollow calm, yes, but one that held promise. The silence of my new apartment felt strange at first, but it was honest. No secrets lingered in the corners, no lies tucked themselves into the shadows. I could breathe again, even if each breath carried the sting of loneliness. Over time, the pain dulled. I learned to live with the scars, to accept that betrayal changes you, not into someone broken but into someone sharper, someone who sees more clearly. I no longer blame myself for his choices. His double life was never a reflection of my worth, but of his own emptiness, his own inability to stand in one world without craving another. Sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, I still think of him. I wonder if he ever regrets, if he lies awake wishing he had chosen differently. But those thoughts don't anchor me anymore. They drift like smoke, and I let them go. The truth is, I survived. And survival, after all, is its own kind of victory.